Hi, everyone, and welcome to another view. I'm Barbara Hamm Lee. Tonight, a lesson on the Nottoway Indian tribe and how a man named Walter Plecker forever changed the relationship between Native Americans and African Americans in Southampton County, Virginia. Please welcome to another view Chief Walt Red Hawk Brown, Chief of the Nottoway tribe, William Lamb Spread Eagle Howell, War Chief of the tribe, and Dr. Tommy Bozier, historian at Norfolk State University. Welcome to the program, gentlemen.
Well, thanks for having us, Barbara. Really appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Now, I wanted, before we get into the details of Mr. Plecker and kind of what happened, because basically your tribe is experienced with some called documentary genocide. Tell us a little bit about the beginning of the tribe.
Well, as you're aware, in 1912, Dr. Walter Plecker became the first director of the Bureau of Vital Statistics. Prior to that, there were no birth certificates, and he was a director up until the 1940s, 1946, until his death. But he was part of the eugenics movement, which was a movement about creating one race of people, which was white, and everything else was put in a pot, as Tina Marie would say, and stir it up and call colored. But he went beyond board on that, wherein as far as first Americans are concerned, he changed birth certificates and marriage license. He even put out letters to census takers in 1930 that people such as myself that are first Americans and Native Americans, that he considered us as being bastards, that we were just trying to be Indian to marry into the white race. What's so interesting about that was that in the 30s, he gave a presentation in New York City and on eugenics, and there were commanders associated with Adolf Hitler that attended that particular meeting.
But basically, when he was the registrar for the Bureau of Vital Records, he changed the names of Indian people in Southampton County, their race from Indian to Negro or colored.
Well, it was referred to as colored, and basically all the tribes in Virginia in the early 1900s were referred to as colored. Okay, then after the 1924 Racial Integrity Act, everything that was in that colored bowl became Negro. Okay, and that's one of the reasons why in 1968 the Supreme Court overthrew that Racial Integrity Act and gave Native Americans the right, if they were born before July 1960, to come forward to the Bureau of Indian Affairs and correct those records that had been changed.
But now your tribe was in Southampton County well before all of this.
Of course.
Okay.
Matter of fact, our history really dates back, according to some archaeologists, to 900 AD. Well, we have a archaeological dig that was done in Southampton County, which dates back, carbon dated, to 1580. In that particular dig, it's called the Handsite dig, and it's called catalog 44SN22. 131 skeletal remains of my ancestors were dug up, and they're now laying in shoe boxes in the Smithsonian. One of the goals that we have with our Caddis-Harite town that we're putting together is to have those reinterred, brought back to the county. But what's so interesting about that is that one of the grave remains has been carbon dated to be a colonial lady, about 25, 26 years old. And in her grave, it was 6 foot buried, 6 foot down. There was her sewing kit, her comb, and also the scissors, which are on file at the Department of Historical Resources in Richmond, Virginia. So the history is documented. We are the only tribe in the Commonwealth of Virginia that ever had a gubernatorial mandated special census. As you know, the census is done every year starting 1790, every 10 years. There was a special census done in Southampton County in Cortland, Virginia, at that time was called Jerusalem, wherein the trustees of the reservation went out and actually recorded the names of individuals living on the reservation, even though they didn't document everybody living there, because they coined this term matrilineal. And if the woman was a mulatto, if the woman was referred to as free people of color, and if the male was a Nottoway, they didn't count the children.
It says here in this book, the statutes at large being a collection of all the laws of Virginia from the first session of the legislature in the year 1690. So it's published pursuant to an act of the General Assembly of Virginia passed on the 5th day of February 1808. All right, they made this book. This is volume 3 of William Waller Henning's Statutes at Large. But I wanted to go to page a little bit more down, 252 here, all right? Because it's going to tell us straight up what they mean about who's mulatto, all right? You ready for this? So it says, and for clearing all manner of doubts, which hereafter may happen to arise upon the construction of this act or any other act, who shall be accounted a mulatto. All right, so there's no confusion or disagreements or any things come up, any issues saying, hey, I'm not, who's mulatto? Then so they're gonna make it clear for you, all right, who they talking about. when they're talking about mulatto. So it says, be it enacted and declared, and it is hereby enacted and declared that the child of an Indian, all right, the child of an Indian and the child, grandchild, or great-grandchild of a Negro, So they're separating. They're not saying, they're saying the child of an Indian and as well as a child or a grandchild, great-grandchild of a Negro shall be deemed, accounted, held, and taken to be a mulatto. You've been classified as a mulatto. Indians and Negroes are the mulattoes. This is from 1705. They were making it clear. All right, so where's the Africans in all this? All right, so again, who is the mulatto? The child of an Indian and the child of a Negro. All right, they shall be deemed, accounted, held, and taken to be a mulatto. And it be all right. So what I have here is the original, what they say here, Virginia Health Bulletin from March 1924. All right, that's volume 16, number 2. It says the new Virginia law to preserve racial integrity. This is written by W.A. Plecker. Remember, Walter Plecker, MD. It says State Registrar of Vital Statistics, Richmond, Virginia. It says here, Senate Bill 219 to preserve racial integrity. Passed the House March 8, 1924, and is now a law of the state. This bill aims at correcting a condition which only the more thoughtful people of Virginia know the existence of. The term Indian, now hear this, very important, the term Indian, all right, will no longer be accepted for that class, all right? You're no longer an Indian. You're no longer an Indian, all right? We're talking about people that might be labeled black, Negro, or colored, all right? Or that might seem mixed. Says the term Indian will no longer be accepted for that class, but must be applied only to those of known pure Indian blood, or those mixed with white. Oh, mixed with white, really? If there's a mixture of Negro, they must not be classed as Indians, but as Negro or mixed Indian. You see that? Oh, how come he's the mixed Indian? So if they're mixed with so-called white, they get to be called a pure Indian blood. You see that? And you see why today, right? And a lot of these reservations, you know, we got to talk honest. There's a lot of white, right, descendants there, or, you know, people that breeded in or mixed into, whites mixed in, and they were called pure Indians. According to Walter Plecker, that was an act. That was law. They made law, right? But if you have any mixture of Negro, or if you're a Negro, or they think you might be Negro, they must not be classed as Indians. All right? You're no longer an Indian. Now you're a Negro, but as a Negro. All right? You see? This was an act in 1924, or mixed Indian. Now you're mixed. Now they say mixed with what? Well, descendant of a slave or a Negro, right? An African. Right? Now if you see how they got the hijack going in 1924? But now all these people that, you know, they knew were Indians, but because they look like Negroes or might have been mixed with a Negro, whatever they thought that was, right? They're trying to make you think these are slaves and Africans, right? Now he's a mixed Indian. Now you're mixed, you're not pure, like the one that's white and married into and he's mixed. No. Now you're the mixed one or you're the Negro. All right? So again, they're not gonna class you as Indians anymore. Not Indians, but as mixed Indian or Negro. Well, documentary Genocide, Families, Surnames on Racial Hit List by Peter Hardin. This is a Times dispatch from the Washington Correspondent from March 5, 2000. All right. So long before the Indian woman gave birth to a baby boy, Virginia branded him with a race other than his own. The young Monacan Indian mother delivered her son at Lynchburg General Hospital in 1971, proud of her Indian heritage. The woman was dismayed when hospital officials designated him as black on his birth certificate. All right, so her son was an Indian. She is an Indian. And what did they do? They still put black on his birth certificate. All right, black has no legal, weight. It means nothing. It's a crayon color. Why would they label somebody who is known Indian black? They threatened to bar his discharge unless she acquiesced. The original orders came from Richmond generations ago. Virginia's former longtime registrar of the Bureau of Vital Statistics, Dr. Walter Ashby Plecker. All right, so we got him and his story, who he was and what he did. All right, telling that that they couldn't be called Indians anymore. They had to be labeled Negroes, colored, or white. All right. He believed there were no real native-born Indians in Virginia, and anybody claiming to be Indian had a mix of black blood. So anybody Indian? So why are all the Indians? Do they all look colored there? Is that why he's saying they must be black? So he's letting you know that almost everybody there is colored. All the Indians in Virginia are colored. So they must be black. They have to have some black blood. What do you mean? What does that mean, black blood? What does that mean? An aggressive policing the color line, policing the color line, he classified pseudo-Indians as black, even issued in 1943 a hit list of surnames belonging to mongrel or mixed blood families suspected of having Negro ancestry who must not be allowed to pass as an Indian or white. With hateful language, he denounced their tactics. Says here, quotes, like rats when you are not watching, they have been sneaking in their birth certificates through their own midwives given either Indian or white racial classification, Plecker wrote. 28 years later, the Monacan mother's surname still was on Plecker's list. She argued forcefully with hospital officials. She lost. So because he was on Plecker's list, her surname, and he had demanded, if you remember, we read the Racial Integrity Act, he demanded all hospitals, all doctors to make sure to not classify these people as Indian, right, when they were first starting. And the people he was doing the census on, they were volunteers. They were volunteering to put themselves as black or Negro. But he made sure that newborns or new people would automatically be classified that, so they wouldn't have the choice. This is what's going on in this case. All right. Today, the woman's eyes reveal her lingering pain. She consulted with civil rights lawyers and eventually wanted correction on her son's birth certificate, all right? It got corrected. He ain't black. He's not black. You mean black power? He's not black. Just because he's of dark complexion? He's a Monacan Indian. What the mother is, right? Isn't that their own law? I don't think the prejudice will ever stop, said the woman, who agreed to talk to a reporter only on a condition of anonymity. She waged a personal battle in modern times against the bitter legacy of Plecker, who ran the Bureau from 1912 to 1946. A racial supremacist, Plecker and his influential allies helped shape one of the darkest chapters of Virginia's history. It was an epic of Virginia-sponsored racism. When he perceived Indians as threats to enforcing the color line, he used the tools of his office to endeavor to crush them and deny their existence. Many Western tribes experienced government neglect during the 20th century, but the Virginia story was different. The Indians were consciously targeted for mistreatment. Plecker changed racial labels on vital records to classify Indians as colored. Aren't you colored? Ain't your ancestors and your grandparents and everybody weren't they called colored? That means they were Indians. I investigated the pedigrees of racially suspect citizens and provided information to block or annual interracial marriages with whites. He testified against Indians who challenged the law. Virginia's Indians refused to die out, although untold numbers moved away or assumed a low profile. Now, 8 surviving tribes recognized by Virginia in the 1980s are preparing to seek sovereign status from the U.S. government through an act of Congress. About 3,000 of the 15,000 Indians counted in Virginia in the 1990 census were indigenous to the state, experts say. Indigenous to the state. It's not that we're trying to dig him up and re-enter him again, said Gene Atkins, assistant chief of the Eastern Chickahominy tribe. Chickahominy. We want people to know that he did damage the Indian population here in the state, and it's taken us years, even up to now, to try to get out from under what he did. It's a sad situation, really sad, said Chief William P. Miles of the Pamunkey tribe. He came very close to committing statistical genocide on Native Americans in Virginia, and it was paper genocide. Chief G. Ann Richardson of the Rappahannock tribe spoke bluntly: devastation, Holocaust, genocide. Those are the words I would use to describe what he did to us. She said, it was obvious his goal was the demise of all Native Americans in Virginia. We were not allowed to be who we are in our own country by officials in the government. They weren't allowing you to be who you are.
Now, War Chief Howell, if someone looked at you right now, they would say that you were African American, would they not? Now, your grandfather, though, was supposed to have been, according to records.
Well, he was.
Oh, he was the last. Well, no, but according to he wasn't the last
Right,
of
exactly,
the Nottoway
exactly.
of the Cherahaka Nottoway tribe, though.
Right.
Tell us about him.
Well, my grandfather, he passed away in 1960, and I was born in 1947, and he married. It was a black woman, and they had one child, which was my mother. But I had a chance to meet him, and because I was a young fellow when he passed away. And he was kind of a quiet man. He didn't hardly say anything. And now it's coming clear as why he was so quiet, because what happened to his people. And
did he talk to you about your heritage?
No. Yeah, I used to ask my mother, I said, why is my grandfather so quiet? He never had much to say. And it's coming pretty clear to me as why he was so quiet.
Because at that time, they did not talk about being Indians because you could be jailed, correct?
Exactly. Right. There was a lot of bad things that could have happened to you if you were Native and if you were caught off the reservation. In some cases, you could be shot on sight. Okay. But getting back to William Lamb, who Paramore and Floyd Painter, Paramore wrote the history of Southampton County, said was the last Cherokee Nottoway riding a bicycle in court. And again, we know that was not true because William Lamb Howell, who was my war chief, is his grandson. But that's typical of what happened to first Americans in the Commonwealth. How things were done to actually change, not only to change one's race, but to change one's ethnicity, to take away their traditions, to take away their cultures, etc. And I'd like to go back to the 1808 Cherokee Nottoway Indian census to my fifth foster great-grandmother, who was Queen Edith Turner. Her name was really Wane Runsira, but the whites called her Turner. And the names, the colonial names, were given to us the same basically as the slave mentality. If your mother was a slave and living on a reservation, that means your child was a slave and that you took on the name of the master. So what had happened with Native people, we didn't have colonial names. We had Native names. My fourth great-grandmother's name was Carahoot. That was her native name. But when they did the census, they pinned her as being Mary Polly Whitson, who married Pearson's Turner and became Mary Turner and went over to Artisttown in 1825, along with the Bozeman, the Browns, the Artists, the Boones, and the Whitsons, and just stayed there until the early 1990s.
So if you look at the records, then you would think that there would be no Indians in Southampton County of Cherahaka Nottoway Indians, but we know that there are. So when did this shift change for people to start researching and accepting their Native heritage?
Well, I give you an example of my family. My grandfather had 18 kids, okay? And he always shared with us our Native heritage. His wife was Ophelia Rogers. That was my father's mother. She was the daughter of Alex Rogers, that is listed on the 1808 Cherokee Nottoway Indian census, who was tried for murder in 1820 and found guilty of second-degree murder. Did 12 years of hard labor, got out, and went into Nansemond County, married, and went over to Hertford County. But at that time, Native people could not testify for each other. I have the whole court case. It was really self-defense. Now, Native people, my people, were classified as mulatto. Okay. Now that was a term that not necessarily mean half white, half black, or half Indian, half white, or half Indian, half black. It was a term that the colonials created back in the early 1700s, and in reality, in many cases, it means purebred Native American. And that term mulatto, I mean, the first one was 1824, the first Racial Integrity Act, 1824, and then 1924 was the last one in Virginia that was brought about during the Pleckerism. So when you're doing genealogical searches, unless you can talk to your ancestors, your parents, your grandmothers, great grandmothers, and I tell people when I do presentations, talk to your people and ask, from whence came I? So I can know how far I still have to go. Okay, because. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Let me ask Dr. Bozier. Talk to me about the relationship then, as Indians started to assimilate into other cultures because they weren't recognized on their own. What was happening back then?
Yes, and especially when I was growing up, there was standoffish between the Native American community and the African American community because of what had happened to them with past relationships, and the Plecker. And Dr. Plecker's very active role in the 1920s. So there was, and of course, that has always been the case in the history of any organization. The majority group tend to divide those minorities and keep them separated.
Mm-hmm. But is the relationship any better? Has it changed?
Sure, the relationship is better. A lot of us as First Americans were amalgamated into schools for free people of color. Okay, I remember my first time going to school. I walked 2.5 miles a day round trip to a school called Diamond Grove School, founded in 1919 under the Rose Wall. Okay, it was another school that my parents and them went to out of Artisttown. Mm-hmm. Then it became the Rose Wall School in 1919. It ended in 1957. Okay, so I had to walk to this school, and I walked back and forth. So it's an amalgamation not only between free people of color and Native people. There was an amalgamation also between colonials. Mm-hmm. I mean, that happened. Matter of fact, that was one of the things that William Byrd, who was involved in the dividing line between Virginia and North Carolina, and Alexander Spotswood was trying to amalgamate Native people with other races to get rid of the Indians. Yeah. Now, when you look at the Byrd papers, and you would read his diary on April the 7th, 1728. He actually visited our reservation in Jerusalem, Cortland, Virginia. Mm-hmm. And what's so interesting about that, he described how our people look. He said the young men came out and their faces were painted and they made all kinds of grotesque figures and they danced for him to the sound of a gore drum stretched tight with an animal skin. Then he said the young women came out and they were tall and shapely and dressed in their finery. Their hair was braided. And they had white and blue conch shells in their hair that hung like locks and around their neck. And then they had wrapped around their body a match coat, which was red and blue, which is a shawl that fitted loosely about their body, that their mahogany skin shone through. Then he went. Let me get this point. He went on to say that these dark angels would make exceptional wives for the English planters, and their dark skin would bleach out in 2 generations. Unquote. That's a quote that he made. First Americans were a rich brown people. They were mahogany in color.
All right, so real quick, I just want to show you guys that the chief, he ain't making this up. This is from primary sources. What he was referring to was William Byrd's account of his experience with the Nottoway Indians, as the chief was saying, his people, back in the 1700s. I'm going to read from this book. It says, William Byrd's Histories of the Dividing Line between Virginia and North Carolina, with introduction and notes by William K. Boyd, PhD, Professor of History, Duke University. We got this from 1929, the North Carolina Historical Commission. So we're on page 114 of this book. So this is William Byrd's account of the Nottoway Indians in the 1700s in this village of the chief's ancestors. He was telling the lady. The young men had painted themselves, right, in a hideous manner. Hideous to him, right? Not so much for ornament as terror. In that frightful equipage, they entered us with sundry war dances, all right? Just like the chief was saying, the war dances, with their painted faces and war dances, right? Wherein they endeavored to look as formidable as possible. The instrument they danced to was an Indian drum, all right? A war drum. That is, a large gourd with a skin bract toward over the mouth of it. The dancers all sang to this music, keeping exact time with their feet, while their heads and arms were screwed into 1,000 menacing postures. All right, so I described the men, as I'm going to describe the women. Upon this occasion, the ladies had arrayed themselves in all their finery. They were wrapped in their red and blue mesh coats, all right, wrapped, thrown so negligently about them. That their mahogany skins, all right, their mahogany skins appeared in several parts, just like the chief was saying. They're describing them. Indians, his people, the Nottoway, having mahogany skins. Now, you know, when you look up mahogany wood or mahogany color, what you're going to get is literally reddish brown, right? Red man, brown, reddish brown, all right? Brown, dark brown, almost like the copper color, right? Mahogany, mahogany. And this is mahogany too. Mahogany, mahogany wood color, mahogany wood. So again, you can see through their wraps, to their clothing, their red and blue coats, and you can see their mahogany skins appeared in several parts, like the Lacedaemonian damsels of old. All right, just like the Spartans. Who's the real Spartans? Future video, we're gonna break this down. Who's the real Greeks? Are people being grouped up as Greeks as well? We're gonna get into all that. It says here their hair was braided, just like the chief was saying, right? Their hair was braided with white and blue peak, and hung gracefully, and a large roll upon their shoulders. I wanted to show some other things that are in this book. We're on page 3 of this book, okay? And it says here in the bottom, the Indians are generally tall and well proportioned, which may make full amends for the darkness of their complexions. Darkness, all right? Dark complexions. Add to this that they are healthy and strong, with constitutions untainted by lewdness and not enfeebled by luxury. Besides, morals and all considered, I can't think the Indians were much greater heathens than the first adventurers, who, had they been good Christians, would have had the charity to take this only method of converting the natives to Christianity. All right, so we got a little bit of his opinion here. All right, again, he's letting you know darkness of their complexion. All right, over on page 57 of this book, very interesting part here regarding one of the indigenous women they're referring to in this book. It says here, in the meanwhile, Shoebrush and I took a walk into the woods and called at a cottage where a dark angel, all right, a dark angel surprised us with her charms. A dark angel, huh? Her complexion was a deep copper, huh? So that her fine shape, she's so fine. A dark angel, so fine, deep copper. Her fine shape and regular features made her appear like a statue, and bronze, like a bronze statue, okay? Bronze done by a masterly hand. She was so appealing to them. You see how they're describing her? To them, she was fine shaped. Shoebrush was smitten at the first glance and examined all her neat proportions, all right? All her neat proportions with critical exactness. She struggled just enough to make her admirer more eager, so that if I had not been there, he would have been in danger of carrying his joke a little too far. Oh, man. So if the other guy wasn't there, he probably would have done something really bad to her, right? But as you guys can see again, the chief was right describing the dark angel. They couldn't resist her. Her deep copper complexion and her charms, her fine shape, and her neat proportions. So that was a few quoted paragraphs and pages from this book. Hope you guys enjoyed that. You know, this is history, primary sources. Nobody's trying to blackwash anybody, and the chief knows what he's talking about. His people, it's real history, as you guys can see.
How many Cherahawk and Nottoway Indians are there today?
We have 282 in our tribe.
282.
That can do a paper trail from a genealogical aspect back to an ethno-historic Cherokee and Nottoway Indian surname. Mm-hmm. That's the only. If you read the Constitution and bylaws on our website, the only way you can join the tribe, you can't say, "Well, I'm Cherokee and Nottoway, I got the blood, I'm going to join the tribe." But you have to show us a paper trail.
You have to be able to trace it.
Yeah.
Now, and Dr. Bozier, I want to turn to you on this part, because if the records say, you know, the birth certificate says Negro, the marriage certificates, et cetera, how do you work past that to prove the
the government is very sympathetic today in light of what happened to the Native Americans in the 1920s in Virginia in particular. So the federal government and even at least the state government is very, very sympathetic about that. But I think there's still a pushback as far as the federal government is concerned in extending recognition to them. And even as I've done research in the various county censuses over the years, I had a very frustrating time in coming across some people who identified as free black in one instance and even white in other instances. Very seldom are they designated as Native Americans, but you see that and you're trying to figure out what's going on. And I know some families who are present day families, I won't mention the family, but because those families are descendants that I know, it probably was a Native American aspect to that confusion
to the family
in the early 19th century. Yes.
Exactly.
What you have state recognition.
Yes, we have state recognition.
And you're going for federal. Okay.
Working on federal recognition.
And if you get federal recognition, what does that mean for the tribe?
Well, that provides some additional resources as far as grant dollars and funding for education, et cetera, and also for starting businesses. State recognition, the way it stands now, basically gives us additional access to grants for schools that were originally founded for Native Americans. And I can say this too, also Hampton University. And Hampton University was the second school in the Commonwealth outside of William Mary and the Grafferton in 1711 that amalgamated Native Americans. They had some 55 different tribes there from 1885 up until 1926. Matter of fact, those buildings and part of the land that Hampton University sits on was given free gratis by an anonymous donor out of Boston.
You know what's really interesting? We called Hampton University because we knew that they had the school, and their response and why they didn't want to come on the show was that they felt that they didn't have enough of the history to be able to speak about it.
Well, I would debate with them on that because there are a number of books that have been written on it, and actually I have a list of all the tribes that attended Hampton University during that period. And Go ahead.
The cemetery out there.
The cemetery.
Okay, they will tell you quite a bit. Yes,
exactly.
Okay, I want to get to some of the regalia that you're wearing and so forth. I want to ask War Chief Howell, first of all, what exactly is a war chief? What do you do?
The war chief is like a security officer. You know, anything going on in the tribe wrong, I step in and handle it. If anyone if they can't do their job, I have to be able to step in and do anybody's job in the tribe. In the absence of the chief, if he can't make it, I step in his absence and do his job. So my job is just like a police officer.
See, I didn't know that.
He's a negotiator also in case we have problems.
Is there a meaning to the feathers in your headwear?
The Chief Brown have done it.
He's wearing a Gustoa.
Okay.
In our Iroquois language, we say Gustoa, and War Chief he has one feather. I have three.
Right, I noticed that. Yeah.
But we didn't wear the long flowing head feathers. Many of us in the 16th, 17th, 18th century, early 1800s rather, ran around bare chested and just a breech cloth. Okay, men and women. So this is something that has been promulgated by way of television and Hollywood. But Western tribes out west, they wore the long eagle staffs. Yes.
Okay.
I mean, with the eagle feathers and the eagle bonnet. But we didn't wear that. We were.
Your people were hunters and fishermen.
Yes, exactly. Right. And farmers. We raised hogs. We trapped. We cured hides, and we hunted and we fished. And the ikiing, the women did all the work.
The women did the work.
We had a great society, didn't we?
I'm gonna get you for that one. Now, I made the mistake of almost touching the staff. Talk to me about that.
Staff.
Yes, your staff.
Well, one of the things. This is not an eagle staff. This is my chief's hawk staff. Okay. The eagle staff is like our U.S. flag, and it's normally handled by the iniha, which is men in our Iroquois language. Also, the drum. Normally women don't drum, but some tribes have a women's group that drum. But normally the men do the drumming and the women, they sing in the background. Do the singing. Right. So that's a part of our tradition and a part of our culture. And that's one of the things that we're trying to do in the tribe. We're trying to rekindle and bring back to life our traditions and our culture. That's one of the reasons why we recently acquired 100 acres of our former 41,000 acres of reservation land granted to us by the House of Burgess in 1705. And we're putting up what we call a Katasharai town, which is a a Palisade Interactive Native American Village, a tribal education center, and a museum, of which we're going to be putting artifacts in, etc.
And this is in Southampton County, where you were originally
right.
done. And you're also having a powwow.
Yes,
that's coming
we have a powwow July the 24th and the 25th. It's a celebration of the green corn harvest when the roasting years are ready. So come out and get a year of corn, etc. But this is our 9th annual powwow that we've done at the Southampton County Fairground in Cortland, Virginia. But this is really the 15th powwow. We do powwows in Nottoway County because that's where we had first ethnohistoric contact with the colonials when they were looking for the lost colony in Manioc in 1608 at a village called Tamahitton in Nottoway County. I mean, that's the second Saturday of October. Then we do a powwow also at First Landing Foundation Historical Villages at Fort Story, October the 19th, November the 19th and November the 20th. November the 19th is a school day. We did that last year and had
bring students.
Yes.
And is that the way that you're teaching young people and teaching the newer generations about your tribe?
Yes. And one of the concerns we have is that it's the lack of history relevant to the SOLs pertaining to Iroquois speakers. And getting back to our language that was recorded by John Wood, professor of mathematics at William Mary in 1820. Thomas Jefferson bought the language in August of 1820. He thought we were Algonquin speakers, so he sent it to Peter de Pontier, a student of Indian language in Philadelphia. And we have letters of interchange between Jefferson and Peter de Pontier, where de Pontier told Jefferson that our language was unequivocally Iroquois, that the dialect was similar to the Mohawk, the Cayuga, the Nida, and the Tuscarora. So, and I walked the language, and I just spoke to you in a few words minutes ago. And but we have a very rich heritage in Southampton County, and we do refer to ourselves as the Cherokee Nottoway Indian Tribe of Southampton County, Virginia, because that's where all the court documents are, to include the Jeremiah Cobb court case that took place in 1849, and Judge Rich Baker dropped the gavel in 1851 and awarded us $818.82. A lot of money.
A lot of money back at that time.
Yeah, exactly. So we always said that if the Commonwealth of Virginia, by way of the Chancery Superior Courts of Southampton County, awarded us $818.82 in 1851 as a tribe, and there's never been any law, policy, or act to negate that, then who's going to tell us that we're not recognized?
That you're not recognizing.
So that's what we took to the General Assembly.
So today, what is the relationship like between African Americans and Native Americans in Southampton County? And we got less than a minute.
Yeah, if you come to my powwow, you'll see that it's great.
Okay.
Because it's about a 50-50 split there, okay? And there's an amalgamation, as I said earlier, not only between African Americans, but also with Caucasians also. But when you come to our powwow, it is a, as Jesse Jackson would say, a rainbow coalition. Okay, you see a hue of color out there. Okay, not only in regalia but also in complexion. It's a beautiful time that we have. We're drumming, we're dancing, we're singing praises and dancing to the Creator that we refer to as Kwekahante in our language. We say Kwekahante Wintika, which is the Great Spirit.
Okay.